Welcome to this edition of Influence Living. I'm your host, Wade. Here on Influence Living, we talk to individuals really from all over the world, and we ask them, what has influenced you? What has really made a difference in your life? Have you ever noticed that some people, regardless of what they go through, they seem to have a sense of peace, a purpose in their life? Well, we're talking to those kind of people on today's program. I believe their stories are going to help you out. First up here on Influence Living, you're going to meet Charlie. Now, Charlie was in prison by the time he was 19 years old in Kentucky. And there he was in prison. Things seemed so hopeless. He got out on parole, ended up drug addicted, and then in his 30s, back in prison in his 30s. And then something influenced his life. Here's his story.
I was born and raised in the state of Ohio in the agriculture belt near Holmes County, Worcester, Ohio. At 17, I went into the military. That didn't work out because they said I had a authority figure problem. At that time in my life, I was so rebellious that I ended up in the Kentucky State Penitentiary at 19. I was rebellious enough that I broke out of jail twice. It took them 2.5 years to get me there. When I finally ended up in prison, I was there for, a total of 3.5, 4 years. Eventually, I made that parole. I had rededicated my life to Christ at that time because when I was 14 years old, I gave my life to Christ. And I was certain that I was going to be a preacher. I went back to Ohio, lived my life as good as I could, but fell again, backslid again, got hooked up with some people of questionable character, and then had pretty much a crime spree of about 15 years to where I smuggled about everything that you can imagine. Got addicted to drugs to the point that I wasn't even functional. I wasn't any good to myself. I wasn't any good to my family. I finally got arrested in North Carolina after starting a small mining company there. And that was the turn in my life. I was 36 at the time. That's when I rededicated my life again, and that was like 30 years ago. And I got down on my hands and knees, and I'll never forget that moment because I was facing 7 to 13 years. In that cell, there was a sense of calm that came over me. There was a sense of peace that everything was going to be fine. A friend of mine and we used to go out to the churches and the organizations and the schools and the colleges and give our testimony in chains and shackles and jumpsuits. And I knew that when I came out of that prison, that's exactly what I was going to do. For some strange reason, the Lord had other plans for me. And it took me 14 years before I was able to get back into a prison system, which I moved to Boise, Idaho, and got involved with Christian and Motorcycle Association and the Vineyard Church, and they allowed me to go with their teams into the prison. The Lord had blessed me with a car business, and that allowed us to have the funds to start a halfway house. The inmates would be able to stay for 90 days and help them get on their feet and go. Well, while I was doing that, I met a fella by the name of Joseph Evanesky, Pastor Joseph, and he wanted to help me with this. He was an inmate at the time. We started to do this more and more. He had the plan that God had a big plan for us, and I wanted to keep it small. And I prayed on it, and I said, Lord, what should I do here? And it's like, I believe the Lord told me, let him go with it, and then you'll see. Well, that ministry now has grown to 3 houses, 2 5-plexes, 58 beds. And 41 of those beds are filled. And we have a thrift store and we have a church. I went to Honduras to see my friend, and I could not figure out why the Lord wanted me to come here, but he even arranged it so that I had a free ticket that I'd won in a contest at an auction to go to Hawaii. And instead of going to Hawaii, I decided to go to Honduras. And I came down here on the faith that this is what he wanted me to do. And I walked this beach out here. It's a beautiful beach. I said, are we going to build a church, a school, an orphanage? What? And I was having lunch with a friend at a restaurant on the river, and we were looking at this bar across the street. And it was the worst bar in that little village. And the Lord put it on my heart to tell my buddy Jim. I said, Jim, someday we're going to own that bar and we're going to turn it into something good. And Jim just smiled at me because there was no way that those people would ever want to let that bar go. Well, within 2 years, they had a shootout in that bar where they had decided that they didn't want to be in the bar business anymore. The bar came up for sale, and we eventually bought it on our terms, not theirs. And then we proceeded to remodel it, and we've turned it into a mission house now, where our primary objective is to feed and entertain orphans that will come for a day or a weekend at the beach. Where we're sitting at right now is a carport or a patio. The building to my left was the original bar, and it has a big auditorium in it. It's got bedrooms with bunk beds and stuff for people to come down. We have community events, we have weddings, we have quinceañeras. We have teams come down. We've had a team come down from Canada that has got us involved in a trampoline event that's now annual. In the background, there is a trampoline that was donated by an organization out of California last year. They donated 5 trampolines to us that we donated to 2 orphanages, 1 school, the fire department volunteers here in El Porvenir, and then we have one for ourselves for the orphans and kids to play on. It's not about getting things in life. It's not about having things or doing things. It's about giving. There's no better good than you can feel than when you're giving. Words can't describe the peace that comes with believing in Jesus and sharing Jesus with everyone else. I mean, if people could just embrace him and learn the love that he has for us, for you, that it's just overwhelming. You can't outgive God. And if you just continue to give in life, you will have a good life.
Well, Charlie's story was certainly interesting, wasn't it? And maybe you haven't found yourself in Kentucky prison system, but perhaps you have found yourself prisoned by other things. Maybe it's your own arrogance, your own pride, your own missteps that you've made in your life, your own sin. And in reality, Charlie found this out. He found that there is no other way to be free from his sin except through Jesus Christ. Charlie made a decision to follow Jesus Christ and to give his life over to Jesus, and Jesus has changed his life, and now Charlie is changing the lives of others right there in Honduras, doing some tremendous things because he allowed God to influence his life. That's what God wants to do. He wants to influence your life, but you've got to let him. And the way you begin a life with Jesus Christ, who is God, is you say, I believe in you. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father except through me. Jesus said it. There's no other way to God except through Jesus. And so how we begin a journey with Jesus Christ is we make a decision, and we say this simply to God. Say, God, I believe in you. Come on, you can say it with me right now. Wherever you're watching this, whether you're in Europe or here in North America or Australia, New Zealand watching our program, you could just say this with me right now. You could say, God, I believe in you. I believe in your Son, Jesus, and I know that he died for my sins. I am a sinner. I have failed, just like Charlie. I ask you to forgive me of my sins, and I ask you into my life, and I will make you number one in my life from this day forward. Just a simple decision like that, to follow God. You don't have to give money anywhere. You don't have to go see a priest. It's between you and Jesus. And if you say that simple prayer, you've begun a journey, and we want to say it's a journey now. We want to encourage you to grow up in your faith. Here at Influence Living, we say begin to talk to God on a daily basis. Just pray to him. We call it prayer, but it's talk, communicate. Then find a local Christian church and tell them of your decision to follow Jesus Christ. And then finally, we would love to hear of your decision to follow Christ. You could shoot us an email at wade@influenceliving.com. wade@influenceliving.com. We would love to hear your story and your decision to follow Jesus Christ. Well, before we move to our next story here in Influence Living, I want to give you an opportunity if you'd like to pick up a great read. For men particularly, ladies, if there's a man in your life that you think can benefit from this book. I just recently wrote a book called 39 Stripes. and it deals with the 39 struggles, sins that us men, we deal with. And so just as Christ took those 39 stripes for us, each one of those represents a sin in a man's life. And here's what I'm offering to you for $9. If you go on Amazon, you can pick up the book just hot off the press, and we would love to send that out to you. It's $9. Go on Amazon. You see the details right there on your screen. It will take a man through a daily journey dealing with sin. The 39 greatest struggles that we men have, and how that Jesus gives us an opportunity. So it's a devotional for men, and we'd love for you to pick one up. Only $9. Go to Amazon. You can pick that up for yourself or the person in your life that you think might enjoy it. Well, up next here on Influence Living, we're going to meet a fellow by the name of Walid. Walid was a Muslim terrorist. He decided.